And, Tucker, no one reached out to me and said, as a senior citizen, are you willing to take a chance on your survival in exchange for keeping the America that all America loves for your children and grandchildren? And if that's the exchange, I'm all in. Let's get back to work. Let's get back to living. Let's be smart about it. And those of us who are 70 plus, we'll take care of ourselves, but don't sacrifice the country. Don't do that. Don't ruin this great American dream.
You're basically saying that this disease could take your life, but that's not the scariest thing to you. There's something that would be worse than dying.
Yeah.
That thing would be the markets. So now that was Lieutenant Governor of Texas, Dan Patrick, basically saying that, hey, man, look, old people would be more than happy to sacrifice themselves if it means the economy. We got to save the economy. Old people, you should just die. Really? What's wrong with these people? Sociopaths, every single one of them. Look, here's the thing, right? People like Dan Patrick, who, by the way, when he says, everybody, you should get back to work, right? Okay, well, what's Dan Patrick going to do? He's the lieutenant governor. He could teleconference, right? It's not like he's out there stocking shelves. It's not like he's out there, manufacturing things or making things. No, he's a politician. He can Skype in and do his work literally from home. But the Walmart greeter, not really going to be able to do that. And of course, that's somebody who gets a lot of interaction from home. Interaction with the public. Unlike someone who, like me, who stays at home, right? And I'm totally fair about that. My risk is minimal, as is Dan Patrick's risk. People most at risk are obviously those that are working in the grocery stores, working in the gas stations, home health care workers, nurses, doctors, all those people who are frontline who do have to do face-to-face interaction with people. Those are most at risk. And a lot of those people do happen to be on the older side as well. Doctors, some nurses, etc. And so you were putting all those people at risk that, like, all the people that aren't on the front lines, that shouldn't be on the front lines, you're also putting other people at risk now. So the people on the front lines are even more at risk. When you add all these additional workers that could be home into the danger zone, essentially. What are you doing? What are you doing? Look, the economy right now is frozen for a reason, right? Going back to work is forcing people to go back to work during this time of crisis, not going to help. Why? People aren't really interested in buying things right now. In fact, reduced demand is why you have a lot of companies, even before mandatory lockdowns, laying people off. Nobody really wants to leave their homes right now, understandably. And in a lot of states, like mine, for example, we're not allowed to leave until, unless we want to get the essentials, food, gas, medicine, etc. We're not out shopping for iPhones or, watching movies or anything like that. And if we do so, we put people at risk. But Dan Patrick and Donald Trump think, oh, no. Go out there and work so that we can boost the stock market and the economy again. Here's the problem, right? We haven't seen the worst of what this is going to bring, right? We still don't have adequate testing. We don't have adequate test kits. We don't have adequate PPE for our frontline healthcare workers. We don't have enough hospital beds or enough hospital space. We don't have enough ventilators. We don't have enough of anything. Over the next couple of weeks, it's forecasted to get worse. Why? Because it's going to get worse before it gets better. And so this is a major problem. Telling people, oh no, we should go back to work. So we don't, so we put the economy over ourselves in order to appease the great market gods. It is absolutely dangerous and ridiculous. That's what it is. Okay. So now we need to have a handle on the situation. To get a handle on the situation and prevent new infections, before we let people go back into the economy, before people will feel comfortable enough to be able to interact in the larger economy as a whole and start buying consumer goods again, instead of course, your basics like food, medicine, toilet paper, etc. Right? So now, Mr. Patrick got a little bit of pushback for suggesting this, and let me start with some of that. Emma Bacciarelli says, I love my grandparents very dearly, and I would not like to see them as human sacrifices at the altar of the stock market, and did not realize this desire had to be actively defended. Who knew that these Republicans would come out to be the worst people imaginable? Hey, Grandma, Grandpa, we love you, but we just love the market more. So get out there, right? Or we're going to get out there and then we're going to come home and you're going to get sick. Brandon Freeman says, telling y'all if Dan Patrick wants to sacrifice himself, that's fine. When he begins volunteering other people to sacrifice themselves on behalf of the state, that's genocide. Not mincing words there. Evan says he's got a little bit more of a sarcastic fun take. To think Texans survived Jade Helm in transgender bathrooms only to be sacrificed by Dan Patrick himself. What a twist. Nobody saw that one coming. Sawyer Hackett says, Dan Patrick with a white hot take on Tucker Carlson that boils down to, trust me, old people are willing to die for Wall Street. And I do have to remind you, it ain't all old people who are dying. No, there are people my age and younger than me that have died from this already. So this is no joke. It ain't no normal flu. Radley Balco says, I'd like to say, while the GOP's dark Shirley Jackson-esque plot twist isn't entirely unexpected, that the primary victims would be a significant part of Trump's base is certainly a surprise. Well, look, again, this goes back to being a sociopath, essentially, right? Saying that, you know what, we really don't care about these people. After all, they are useless tools. I wouldn't say useless, but they're, useful tools. And they help us be able to rob the rest of the country. They're easily duped, susceptible. And I'm not saying I'm not saying this, but this is, I think, what they believe, right? The wealthy and powerful, that, older people are easily duped and that they're, by our propaganda, and they hate socialism just as much as we do because we don't profit off of it. And so they always turn out for elections, even though they're voting against their own interests. And so we don't care if they die because we can just propagandize more of you. Well, look, they do have the media. They do have Fox News. They have all that stuff. So, I mean, it's a disaster, right? And it's a really sick kind of worldview that they have. Now, Bradley Moss asks, do I have to choose which of my grandparents to sacrifice, or do they do that for me? Is there a test they take? Maybe a panel of people who assess which ones can survive the longest. Oh, you mean like a death panel, right? I mean, or a panel that decides who will die and who will live, like a death panel. Ironic. Daniel Dresner addresses that, by the way, by saying, 2010, conservatives freak out over death panels. 2020, conservatives endorse reality version of Logan's Run. Yikes. Not good. Maria Alexander says, hello, it's me, a principled conservative, and I'm here to say, why wait for grandma and grandpa to die in the pandemic when we can start hunting them for sport today? Lots and lots of sarcasm in that one. I hope. Lindsay Adler says, I prefer to keep my one remaining grandparent. Thanks. Mike Drucker says, let's make America great again. 2016. 2020, if hundreds of thousands of you die for us to have a lot of brands of cereal, I guess that's just the way it is. Capitalism at its finest. Scott Lennon says, screw the masks and ventilators and start printing up those I die for the Dow t-shirts for Florida's nursing homes. I die for the Dow. Nope. Not interested in that. Another user says, you can't be a pro-life Republican and also want people to die for the Dow Jones or the NYSE or, yeah, you know. Brendan Carrot says, after spending a single week inside, right-wingers are asking you to consider letting grandma die so their favorite cheesecake factory reopens. Drinking bottomless margaritas on some cruise ship called Mermaid of the Seas is a life or death issue for them. And by the way, if you're on a cruise ship right now, not good. Bad idea. Just saying. And let's see. Lights out with probably the best point here, the most salient one. Amazing how they'll die for the Dow Jones to save their grandchildren, but won't do anything to stop the planet from melting. Yeah. Look, I mean, that's exactly it, right? Nothing with climate change, but we got to protect the almighty markets. Now, yeah, I mean, you might think, okay, look, this is a couple of conservatives. Obviously, President Trump, we know he's a sociopath. Are a lot of conservatives really buying into this? Other than these two guys who are very wealthy? Well, you've got right-wing host Jesse Kelly saying this on Twitter. Quote, if given the choice between dying and plunging the country I love into a Great Depression, I'd happily die. The market gods appreciate your sacrifice, Mr. Kelly. And by appreciate, they mean make lots and lots of money for shareholders, but not you or regular people. Look, I don't think he realizes that a recession is kind of the best case scenario right now. And I say recession because the worst case scenario, which is seeming more and more likely because we do live in America, and America is headed up by two feckless conservative parties and reality show TV clown, depression seems inevitable. But I don't know for sure. Look, if we do what we need to do, and we shut down for 5 weeks, right? Practice social distancing. You freeze rents, mortgages, utilities. You send people a decent monthly check, right? And then after that time, after we've got a handle on this whole thing, you let people go back to work afterwards, right? That would still end up leading, obviously, to a lot of economic harm, right? There's no way around that. The economy is effed right now. And you can't save it as it is. The ride is over, right? No matter what. This is best case scenario. Worst case is what Trump is proposing and these right wingers. We get back to work. We spike the infection rate. We cause people to go back into isolation after a couple of weeks, right? Because they are getting sick and spreading it. Then hospitals are overloaded. Staff die, right? You also have hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of unnecessary deaths. And then you have a depression. And for what? Markets. Of course, the markets. In this case, doing the right thing means foregoing short-term market gain, but saving the economy in the long run. Because when it comes to the long-term health of the economy and economic reality, doing that at least 5 weeks is the best that we can do. It has to be done. If not, you have depression, and you've got the guaranteed deaths of, as I said, countless of American citizens. And these Republicans, unfortunately, seem to want to blindly charge us into the worst case scenario while screaming for the markets. And perhaps even Leroy Jenkins. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know how I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.